Hey there, let's talk about lenses, and specifically lenses for Sony full-frame cameras. Now, if you're not shooting on Sony, there will still be some useful information in this video because every camera manufacturer has comparable lenses. But if you're shooting on cameras like the FX3, the A7IV, or maybe the A7SIII, or other full-frame cameras, this video is going to explain my favorite lenses for shooting video on Sony full-frame cameras. Now, I always recommend that you invest as much money as possible in getting the highest quality lenses that you can because that will ensure the best image quality independent of whatever body you're shooting on. Now, there's an expression you might have heard, you want to marry your lenses and date your camera bodies, and I think there is some truth to that because it's super important to get the best lenses, not just in terms of image quality, but the ones that fit your workflow the best. And in this video, I want to explain the 3 lenses that I use for shooting video to do all of my work. As I mentioned, I carry 3 lenses in my kit, but frankly, I could probably get away with 2 of them for about 95% of my work, but I will talk about the 3rd one as well. Now, let me talk a little bit about how I use my lenses so you can understand that because everyone's use case is going to be different. A lot of the time, I'm filming myself on my farm, outside, doing vlogs, that kind of stuff. I have one lens for that, and then I have another lens when I'm out shooting other people, shooting documentaries and interviews and all those kinds of things. I'm a huge fan of zoom lenses for a bunch of reasons, but the main reason is the flexibility and just ease of use. Now, when I'm out shooting documentaries and stuff like that, it's very run and gun, very quick pace. Obviously, with a zoom lens, you get a wide range of focal lengths, which is awesome for me because it's super fast to be able to get different looks. I also don't have to change lenses and allow dust into the sensor. I'm often shooting outside on farms and things like that, so that is a lot of flexibility to me. I don't really worry about low light so much because I'm often shooting outside, and also these new Sony full frame cameras are so good in low light that even at like F2.8 they do a great job. So let's talk about some of these lenses. Now, they are very expensive, but as I said, it's important to invest in high quality lenses. So the first one I want to talk about is the Sony 16-35 F2.8 G Master. This is the lens I use for filming myself and doing a lot of vlogs and things like that. I love this lens because of the flexibility of the focal lengths from 16-35. So let me take this outside and show you what it looks like. I'm outside using the 16-35 at 20 millimeters and f2.8, and 20 millimeters is my favorite focal length for filming myself, especially when I'm outside. A few reasons for that, one of which is it gives a decently wide field of view, and I think when you're making YouTube videos especially, people do like to see a lot of what's in the background so they can feel like they're there and see more of what's going on. And the other thing about 20 millimeters is that I can get fairly close to the camera without being like a super close shot. So the camera is pretty close right there, and the benefit of that is that if you're using a microphone that's on top of the camera like I am right now, the audio is much better because I'm much closer to the microphone. Now at f2.8, which is as wide open as this lens goes, you do get some decent separation with the background when you are this close to the camera, which is great. So if you're looking for one of those shots like this where the background's a little bit blurry and you want the attention and the focus to be on you, the subject, you get a little bit more separation. So 20 millimeters at f2.8 is absolutely awesome. This is definitely one of my favorite combinations for filming myself. Now, the best thing about this lens is that it's not just a 20 millimeter lens. You can go all the way down to 16 and up to 35. So if I change this to 35, I obviously have to back up a little bit, but you can see I get a much tighter shot, obviously 35 millimeters. I get a little bit more compression with the background and get a very different look. The other reason I love 35 millimeters is because it's great for B-roll. So, you know, if I was sticking to a prime lens here and I only had like a 20 millimeter or 24, I won't be able to use 35, and I think 35 is great not only for talking head if you are, you know, filming yourself or other people, but it's great for doing B-roll. So having that all in one lens is super versatile. So you can see the versatility of this lens and why it lives on my camera most of the time. 16-35 is a very versatile focal range, and especially if you're using one of the Sony higher megapixel full frame cameras like the A7IV, which has a crop mode, because this 16-35 becomes like a 16-52. Now, I tend to shoot at 20 millimeters and longer because if you go wider than 20, you will get a little bit of distortion out towards the edges of the frame, which is totally common with wide angle lenses. But it's good to have that in your lens because sometimes you need that for things like real estate. So you can see why I just absolutely love this lens so much. Next lens, the Sony 24-70 f2.8 G Master. This is the most versatile lens you could probably buy ever. Let's take it outside, show you what it looks like. Now we're on the 24 to 70 at 50 millimeters and f2.8. And the reason I'm showing you this is because 50 millimeters is one of my favorite focal lengths, and I can use this for a lot of different things. But one thing I love it for is talking head or interview style stuff, because 50 millimeters is pretty close to what the natural focal length of the human eye is. And for the A-roll shot, it's absolutely great. Even at f2.8, I know a lot of people will want their 50 millimeter lenses to open up wider and get a blurrier background. But for me, I get plenty of background separation here, and you get a more of a compressed look and a tighter shot, but it just looks really, really cool. So I know this lens can do a lot of other classic focal lengths like 24 and 35, but 50 is great. And once you get up towards 70, you get even closer to that 85, which is another, you know, really common focal length. So very versatile lens, and I think at 2.8 you get a lot of different options. As you can see, this lens is also super versatile, and you're probably picking up on a theme here that I like lenses that give me versatility, because I like to keep my lens kit as small and simple as possible. This is the lens, as I said, that goes on my camera when I'm out shooting other people in documentaries. If I need to go out wide, it goes out to 24, which is usually wide enough for me, and if I need to punch in for talking head, an interview, or B-roll, I can go up to 50 or even 70, which is great. Now this on my camera, I put this on and I'm good to go. If I'm out on a farm, walking around, doing run and gun shooting, I don't have to carry multiple lenses with me, extra gear with me. I can just put this on and I'm ready. And I also don't have to be changing out lenses, as I said before, allowing dust in the sensor. So let's talk about the next lens. All right, the last lens that is in my kit is the Sony 70-200 f4. And you're probably wondering, Josh, why did you get the f4? You have the other 2.8 zooms. Well, the 2.8 G Master lens is very heavy, very large, and very expensive. This is significantly lighter, smaller, and cheaper, and that's why I went with it. Now, I know that the 2.8 Mark II is coming out pretty soon, and that is significantly lighter, but it's almost $3,000, and that is very expensive for a lens that I don't use a whole bunch. What am I going to be using this lens for? Well, this is going to be used mainly for a B-cam on a 2-camera interview shot to get a different look on a second angle, for some B-roll, for some alternative shots, and it's also great for photography as well. This lens also has stabilization, which is absolutely fantastic, and the f4 does not bother me whatsoever, because a lot of times I'm shooting outside, and if I'm inside, I will have lights, and the low light capabilities on the Sony cameras, as I mentioned before, is absolutely incredible. So this completes the Trinity. I have the 16-35, the 24-70, and the 70-200, and there's a reason why that Trinity exists, is because you can cover every focal length from 16 to 200. I also want to mention here why I really prefer to shoot on native lenses, and I'm shooting all these Sony lenses now with my Sony cameras, but when I was shooting Canon, I used the RF lenses most of the time, and the main reason for that is the autofocus performance is always going to be slightly better in terms of speed and accuracy. Now, the third-party lenses are getting really, really close and really good, but frankly, you're always going to get the best performance using native lenses, and for someone that, like myself, who relies on autofocus, I want to have the best autofocus possible. Another thing is, when you stick to using native lenses, you stick to the same ecosystem. And when you're trying to match shots from different cameras and different lenses, it's really helpful to have them all in the same ecosystem. So if I have a shot with the 16-35 and a shot with the 24-70, I know they're going to match really closely, because lenses in the same ecosystem are going to have the same look, same sort of colors, and all that kind of stuff. When you try to start matching shots from different cameras with different lenses, they're going to have slightly different looks, and when you get into post, it's going to be a lot easier when they all match. Another thing I noticed about the Sony native lenses is that the autofocus noise is almost completely silent. Even with the Canon RF lenses, they do make a little bit of noise, but these lenses are just fantastic in terms of autofocus noise. I also think the build quality is awesome, and they're very durable. So this is no doubt a very expensive lens kit, but as I said earlier, I think it's super important to invest in high quality lenses whenever you can. And sometimes I think it's best to even hold out longer for the purchase, try to save up and get that really nice lens, because you'll be reaping the benefits from that purchase for a very long time. That being said, if you're just starting a videography business, you're just starting a YouTube channel, maybe you're just a hobbyist, these lenses might be very expensive. And so there are some alternatives from Sony and third-party manufacturers that I want to recommend for you today. So we'll start with the 16-35. This lens, I think, is one of the hardest lenses to find a replacement for, but there are some alternatives out there. First of which is the Tamron 17-28 f2.8. You still get that 2.8 aperture, but you do lose quite a bit of focal range. You're, from 16-35 going down to 17-28, and I think from 28-35 is kind of a big deal for me. But it is out there and is significantly cheaper. The build quality and the image quality is not going to be the same as the G Master. The other option, one of the other options, is the Sony 16-35 f4, which is a great lens, but again, image quality is not going to be as good. You're giving up the one stop of light from 2.8 to 4, but it does have stabilization, which is very handy. And I think the third option is the Sigma 14-24 f2.8. Now that lens is decently priced, but you're losing, the focal range is from 24 to 35, and it also has the bulbous front, so you can't put, regular lens fillers on there, and that's kind of a bummer. Now the 24 to 70 is probably the easiest one to find a replacement for, and the most obvious one, which you probably already know about, is the Sigma 24 to 70 f2.8. Fantastic lens, super sharp, great image quality, great build quality. Everyone who owns one absolutely loves it. I highly recommend it. And there's just some slight differences, and it's just a personal preference thing, but I do actually prefer the look out of the G Master lens to the Sigma lens. It's just a different look, and it's personal preference. The other option out there is the Tamron 28 to 75 f2.8, which is another option that's a little bit cheaper, but again, you're giving up a little bit on build quality and image quality, and you're also losing 4 millimeters on the wide end, which to me is kind of a big deal. Another great option is the Sony 24 to 105 f4. It is a great lens. It is super sharp. If you can handle a maximum aperture of f4 versus 2.8, it's a great lens to go with because you get a wider focal range. You get up from 70 up to 105, and it also has stabilization. So there's some great options out there if you're looking for a cheaper alternative to the 24 to 70 G Master. So for the 70 to 200, I think there's only really one competitor, and that's going to be the Tamron 70 to 180 f2.8. So you still get that 2.8 aperture, and I have used that lens before, and I didn't really notice losing 20 millimeters on the long end. Great lens, but the build quality on the Sony is way better. It also has optical stabilization, which frankly is very important for long lenses because it makes a much bigger difference when you're shooting at long focal lengths. So that's why I went with the Sony. Anyways, those are the three lenses that make up my kit. They're super versatile, flexible, and I can pretty much do everything that I need to with those three lenses, and I absolutely love it. So hope you found this helpful. There will be links down below if you want to check out any of those lenses, and if you did enjoy this and found it helpful, I greatly appreciate it if you consider hitting subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.